Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel. This is Jason,
Hey,
and we hope you all have had a fabulous Christmas. We're recording slightly before Christmas, so we're assuming that our Christmas has been fabulous.
we haven't had our Christmas officially yet, but I'm sure it's going to go off without a hitch. And even if it, does have little hitches, we'll slide on through. We always
That's
do.
right. We'll just hitch ourselves to Santa's sleigh and take off
Whee!
into the new year.
Yeah, like our thumbnail did the other week. We were like, wee, in the sleigh. That was great.
Oh, that's right.
Or flying on the back of a
I
dragon.
think I blocked that one out.
You did.
Out of my memory. Anyway, so
That's great.
we have had a couple of really serious episodes, really thoughtful episodes that I have just absolutely enjoyed throughout the month of December. For this one, we were thinking New Year, transformations.
Transformation.
And I made the joking remark, yeah, like werewolves, right? Werewolves transform. We should do an episode on werewolves.
I wasn't thinking that at all. It took me by surprise. And the best thing you can do if Rachel has an idea is just, if she's in a wagon and she's flying somewhere, hitch your wagon to hers. Because I think if she has an idea, she's got a really good, solid core to what she's wanting to talk about, or she's got some ideas, or she's enthused, and harness the
You have
energy.
confidence in me because I just thought that sounds like fun. Let's do it. So.
Yeah. I don't know, but see, I have a serious side, so I don't know whether the serious side is going to come out or not.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find something serious to discuss in that. But it's a really fascinating topic, and
there are two different sides of that topic too. Even in fiction, there's two different ways of looking at it.
It reminds me a lot, as we were discussing about our episode on dragons, where we were talking about how the discussion on dragons has kind of changed from.
You also mentioned shifters, dragon shifters in that episode, and so
right. And
there we go.
So now we're talking about, wolf shifters, and again, just more of the fantastical world. And there's so many books and movies around it. I feel like, though, there are fewer good movies being made now. Like, I feel like they did werewolf movies in the past, but there's not a lot of werewolf movies that have come out in recent years. Like, there's some TV series and stuff, but I don't feel like they've been really very good.
There was one that was interesting, but okay, of course. All right, there's a production company called A24, and they always come up with these what are called elevated horror, where they talk about something that's scary, but they have an extra level to it. Like it's about trauma, or it's about some meaning. So this one guy came up with Invisible Man, and it was about this woman who is being stalked by her ex, and he's a genius, and he came up with this suit, and so it's really scary, but also has that next level of that she's being being threatened by him, and so the same company did Wolfman, and it was about I think it was about generational trauma and the tragic nature of the beast inside and how it can be passed on. And it was very man-centered, men and their trauma and how it affects their family going forward. And so honestly, you could have taken the wolf thing out of it completely, and it would have been this really harrowing drama, family drama. But you add the wolf element to it, and you can kind of say things.
That's the thing that I feel like with most of the kind of paranormal or just fantastical fantasy type things or creatures or beings. I feel like they take and they let us, through kind of amping up an aspect, they let us explore our humanity and things that we deal with and that we struggle with. I think that's really where those ideas come from. And the idea of a man transforming into a wolf or any kind of beast is it really did start out as that idea of losing your humanity. But I also think that over time that conversation has shifted. We're
Pun
gonna
in pun
no.
intended. Yes, shifted. See, I gotcha.
Okay,
That was
okay.
good. It was good.
But I want to discuss kind of the origins of it and then go to where what I'm seeing more of
Yeah.
nowadays in like the modern fiction that's coming out. And because there's really good wolf shifter werewolf
Talking
fiction.
heroic, even.
Well, and I'm also talking about it's another one that when you just look into all the fiction, there's a huge amount of smut in that genre too. So
I
there's some really
I take that
bad,
off of
really
my
toxic
radar
stuff.
at all.
But the thing is this genre specifically, because it deals with alphas, with the concept of, wolves and
Or the beast
alphas,
inside, and
right?
and
It is very much, there is a very toxic genre of that if you go, oh, I enjoy reading, books about werewolves, then that's going to be kind of,
does that reach
you
over
have to
into
be
the faded?
careful not to fall into that.
Does that reach over into the faded mate? Because you talked in the faded
Right.
mates episode conversation where we talked about. You said there was some toxic elements of that faded mates thing, and
Hmm.
when you described, it, I could definitely tell. So if you have mates in a werewolf clan or something like that, oh, you had the imprinting thing can get in there too, which
Yeah.
that's not great.
Which I think that we're also probably going to have to pull in and discuss Stephanie Meyer too, because I feel like
That's kind of a thing on
she's
this
with
podcast.
whenever you go into this type of genre, her impact on what has happened in fiction with werewolves and vampires, she had a really big impact on
For good or ill. Yeah.
where that genre has gone. And kind of there was a turning point that happened there, which I find it interesting and something that I think that in that discussion it belongs. But
You can't understate the fact that yes, it has had an impact. I I'm not sure if it
let's talk about the
for
origins.
ill. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go back to kind of the start of.
Do we have any extreme history nerds here who have to hold back? Oh yeah. So are you releasing
Yeah, go for
are
it.
you releasing
I'm
the beast?
releasing the beast.
Okay. Many times, and I would say more often than not, it was seen as a curse, either something that was laid upon you. But this is a through line throughout all the historical myth of it, and the historical myth of it wasn't just a myth in the minds of some people. I'll explain why. So it's either a curse that's laid on you or something that you choose to do to yourself. It's not part of nature. You are basically adopting elements of nature to accomplish your ends. In the earliest stories, it was a curse. In fact, lycanthropy is named after a character named Lycaon in Greece, who was in Greek myth, who was cursed by Zeus to become a wolf man. So that's where we get that. But you have these different myths that go around. In fact, the reason why you have wolf transformations show up in European and American later on, mainly European is where that kind of got birthed. Get that there. But in Central and South America, you get puma shifters, you get
Hmm.
jaguar shifters, because that is a predator kind of
Hmm.
thing. In Russia, you get bears, you get shifting into bears,
Hmm.
which Bjorn from Lord of the Rings was a bear shifter.
There was a werewolf in
Yes,
Tolkien's
in
work
the
too.
Silmarillion,
Yeah,
right?
in the story of Beren and Luthien,
Yep,
you
and
actually
a
have.
vampire, the kind of
Hmm.
bat kind of
Yeah,
thing.
well, Sauron. It was Sauron, right?
Well, he
Sauron
transformed.
transforms himself into a werewolf in order to chase after Baron and Luthien after they escape from his dungeon. And with the help of, she has a dog, right? It was just, or a wolf?
I think
It's a
so.
dog.
It was like a hound?
Yeah, a hound, that just really intelligent, loyal hound that is helping them on this. It's, what's his name? Huon? Oh, if I get that wrong, I'm gonna be so
No,
sad.
that's okay.
But
We'll put it on screen. But yeah,
yeah,
but a lot of the myths and things like that. I mean, you have leopard shifters in Africa, so it is a thing where what is human becomes the animal. Now, the funny thing is about it is we spend time in public school telling our children that they are no different than animals. They're not special. They're just evolved primate creatures. We tell them that. There's no you are made in the image of God, right? There's no that you're not special to God. And so what are you left with? You're left with there's this animal beast side that we have somehow outgrown. And so in a way, when you're getting back to nature, you're getting back to that beast side, those things that you may have outgrown or evolved past. So when you have that mindset, how can somebody not use that beast mindset to accomplish some probably a freedom from morality, maybe even? In the Middle Ages, you actually had people who supposedly had done killings. There was a man named Peter Stump that actually in history it said that he was executed. It was claimed that he said he was a werewolf, and they had found he had children that he had killed and things like that. No, I mean not to
you
get
almost
serious,
wonder
but
if there was some demonic
mm,
possession and influence that, or even demons taking on some kind of form that influence those myths and things, the
uh,
same as the dragon.
the early church fathers, I think Augustine said this, but it may be in his book City of God. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But he said that the devil works on the senses, and he doesn't have the ability to transform matter. That's God's creation. So
Mhm.
basically, in terms of psychological viewpoint, like there actually is lycanthropy in psychological books. They'll say someone who believes themselves to transform. So are they
Mhm.
really transforming? No, but they're doing these beast-like things, and they're in this other mindset. So if you're in this other mindset, these things you do, you would say, I transformed into a wolf, but to somebody watching you, you just went berserk. In fact, the word berserk actually means someone who wears the bear skin and shapeshifts. So it's kind of funny that we use the word berserk. But
Yeah,
you
the berserker.
that's where
Yeah.
it's bear sark, which means bear skin. But the interesting thing about that is you can actually choose to be that. You put on a wolf skin belt on, and you supposedly do some kind of ritual. And so many times it was considered sorcery or witchcraft. So
Mhm.
you were right on track when you're talking about something demonic, because it's not later on you get the whole thing about, oh, I got bit by a werewolf, and so the curse. That is invented. That is invented by fiction. And maybe that comes from
So you're saying
rabies.
that maybe like,
Like rabies could be the source of that myth.
yeah, but like at the beginning, you're saying it was more of like a choice that someone
Yeah.
chose to kind of embrace that animalistic
And it was always
nature in order
black
to,
magic or something. It
right.
was not part of God's
But it would
way.
be a way to up your strength and your, ability to to fight or defend,
Maybe.
and kind of embracing that
Or nothing's off the
just.
table with regard to your actions. So basically, the things that you would never see yourself doing, you did. And so if you think about it,
Almost just sounds like
yeah,
people went on like, a huge adrenaline rush type thing where they went,
yeah,
I could see that as being like a battle type situation,
yeah, that you psych yourself up with it.
but then just
Yeah.
completely losing, or feeling like you're losing humanity because of it's just that repetition of,
Well, you're talking about in the
killing.
war with the berserker,
Right.
it many times, I mean, people would on their shields would have pictures of wolves, pictures of
Mm-hmm.
bears, and they would almost be conjured. Because the thing is, when we're human, we have discussions, we have diplomacy, we shake hands, we
Right.
do all these human type things, and war ultimately is a
But it
very
it
brutal,
almost
bestial
seems, yeah,
thing.
it seems like it's almost a coping mechanism that you're going, I'm going to shut off my humanity and
Hmm.
my brain in order to be able to enter into battle
Get a
mode,
wild state, yeah,
to have this,
rage.
I'm
Right.
going to become the wolf, and that's something other than me. So it's almost a way of like cutting off the conscience and the
Disassociation
right.
is what you're talking. Yes,
Yeah, it's
100%.
a way to be able to say, well, that wasn't me that just killed all those men. That wasn't me doing the fighting. And it's a way to go, I don't have to deal with the repercussions of death because that wasn't me.
Yep. Oh, you said something about adrenaline rush. Not only do they put on the belt, by the way, they put on a salve, a magic salve.
Mm.
Um, but that's also the magic salve is also in the witch things where the witches would have what they would say, I got on a
Hmm.
broom and I flew around with the devils and stuff. But the thing is though, they say that that salve probably had herbs and drugs and hallucinogens in
Oh,
it.
good grief. Yeah.
So you're basically going, I flew around. How many times have you seen
Hmm.
somebody like on Joe Rogan's podcast when they said, I flew into the other realm and I saw these elves? And you're like, how's it different from what the witches did when they had the witches' Sabbath, when they would coat themselves in these things
You
and get
just had
and
some mushrooms and you were tripping.
well, you get around the fire and
Can
the
we
heat.
put that on YouTube?
No, the heat from the fire is part of it too. They do around a campfire. So when you do the transformation, you do the ritual around a fire, the heat is going to do what? It's going to cause that stuff to absorb in your skin.
Yeah.
So here we are just saying this is the possibility. But yeah, it's definitely a disassociation. Now that's if the wolf is a devilish thing. What about, and this is going to key right into what you're talking about. What if the wolf was from God? There is a man who is actually on he's on back in the medieval times, like 1600s. He claimed that he and some of his other fellow men would transform into wolves. They called themselves the Hounds of God, and they would what they would do is they would go into hell itself and fight
Mm.
the demons and spirits that were causing trouble for the crops. They were causing the blight on the crops. And they said, this has got to be the devil causes. So they basically would say that. And the man was not executed, interestingly enough, because he didn't do any crimes, didn't kill anyone. He just claimed something and they said, oh, you're crazy. But he said the hounds of
Yeah.
God. But they whipped him and sent him on his way, basically.
Yeah,
But
because that takes care of everything.
and there's some other groups that have said, I think the Ben and Dante, I think is another name of another group, but they basically have said that God gives them this ability to do this, and they do it for good purposes. But those stories are very rare, but they're rare enough that they're interesting. And
Mm.
so, like you said, heroic. That could be a heroic werewolf, and there's not that many of them out there, but I mean,
Hmm.
that's something to think about.
So it is interesting looking at, these legends and the histories,
Mhm.
and then coming into the more modern day where, even looking 100 years ago, werewolves were always, they always seem to be considered a curse. And then you move into Stephanie Meyer,
Right.
who made sparkly vampires and wolf shifters
Shirtless
who
Native
were
American
good.
dudes, sons of chiefs.
Yeah. So in her story with the werewolves,
Mhm.
they were not actually werewolves. It didn't seem like they were
Right.
more of like a spirit protector. It was within this Native American tribe that they had this gift, and they were given a gift directly as a result of the existence of vampires.
Right.
So it was kind of this balancing out.
Adaptation, maybe even to
Right.
the cold ones, as
To
they
the
were called.
right. So, because they were vampires, it was basically they were given this gift to be able to protect their people. And, it's not like it was actually, oh, it was a gift from God, but it seems like it was that way. Or a gift from the
What about?
universe or whatever in her
Well, you were talking about curse, and this is a gift. But
right.
I was thinking about what about the time when one of the guys couldn't control himself or something, and he slashed his wife or mate or something like that. What, I don't remember what his name was, but I was like, oh, there,
Sam.
Sam. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a downside to this,
Yeah.
but
Well, and that was basically just he got angry and changed and she was too close when he shifted.
so you're supposed to be
So
separate yourself a little bit till you can change. I don't know the
it
rules.
well, I guess the thing was is that they had the gift had skipped a generation because the vampires had moved away. And when the vampires aren't in the
And they,
area,
hmm,
the gene doesn't activate. So when the vampires moved back,
like the Cullens.
when the Cullens moved back,
Okay,
or any vampire comes in the area, it basically activates that werewolf
that's
gene.
how they knew that the Cullens were back, or somebody was coming because people they started changing again,
Well, no, I mean the
getting
Cullens
wolfy.
didn't come back. They came back openly. They didn't do it. They didn't hide or
Right,
anything.
because you knew a doctor was there
Right.
named Cullen. Yeah.
So they came back and then they that activated the gene and then the younger generation then transformed and it just I guess he didn't have anybody kind of teaching him or mentoring him. He
Uh,
was the first one. So then, after he kind of got that under control and figured out how that was all working, then he was able to mentor the younger ones as they started shifting.
right.
So there's a mentorship in it that she worked into her world. But for them still it was kind of the thing of there's a struggle between they didn't really want that and yet at the same time it was a gift and they recognized the advantages. So once they kind of you see Jacob struggling as he's not understanding and he's realizing that this is going to change where he thought his life was going. It's kind of this destiny that's been forced on him rather than him choosing. And he actually was supposed to be the alpha and he rejects it because of Bella and his feelings for her. And he goes, I didn't want this. I don't want the authority. I don't want the responsibility of being the alpha of the pack. So he lets Sam keep it
He
until
never takes it back
he
on
does take it back. But he kind of starts his
when
own
he feel, like, realizes
separate pack.
that the triangle is not a triangle anymore. The love triangle, you know.
Um it's complicated. How it happens in the last book is when he actually Sam is making a decision about Collins and Bella and their unborn baby. It's it's the baby that, Sam goes, it's an unknown, it's an abomination. There's a vampire baby. We've got to kill it before it's born.
Yeah.
And Jacob's like, no, that's going to kill Bella. No, you have to wait until she's born. And Sam wasn't going to do that. So Jacob like goes, nope, I'm the alpha. I'm not because Sam was forcing him to actually join in.
Or to make a stand.
Right. Sam was like, we're going to do this. You're a part of the pack. You have to help us.
Right.
And Jacob's like, no. I am, I'm the son of an alpha. I'm not going to bow to you. And so then he kind of breaks off on his own and becomes like alpha of
I
his
tried
own.
to look for the clip. I'm the son of a chief, and I couldn't find it.
They do such a bad job in the movie on that.
Really? Yeah.
It's so,
Where they show the wolves talking like rah, rah,
yeah.
rah, rah. Yeah.
But I mean, regardless, it is that thing of you have this element being introduced of somebody not liking what their destiny is and then kind of accepting and embracing it and coming to peace with it. that is seen in Stephanie Meyer's work. You have that happens both with the vampires with Jacob and I'm sorry, with the werewolves with Jacob and with the vampires, where Edward is going, you know, this is actually a curse. I wouldn't choose it. I don't want you to become a vampire. And Bella going, being a vampire is what I was actually created and supposed to be all along.
Right.
This is who I actually am inside. So it's kind of that taking what one person sees as a curse and kind of flipping on its head as another person seeing it as a blessing. And since then, and I don't know about the books written before. I don't know if Stephanie Meyer was actually the first or if she was just kind of the biggest one that was doing
The
it in that
biggest,
time
because
period.
there's some things that have been done prior to that.
Yeah, but there's this shift that happened going from this something like this is a curse always to this idea of this is a part of who I am, and so I'm going to embrace it and accept it. And that I think is really interesting because since then, most of the books that I read that have vampires, that have werewolves in them, are all doing that same thing of it's not seen necessarily as a curse, it's seen as this is a part of who I am and I can control it. There may be some aspects of it. You know, it's kind of like Bella's first thought when she hears that Jacob's a werewolf is she goes, well, but can't you stop? Do you not want to be? And Jacob's like, what? And she's like, well, I don't like the part where you're hurting people. And he's like, we don't hurt people, we protect people.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, the idea of you're still maintaining your humanity even through
Control.
a
Yeah.
shift. You're still maintaining control, that you can be something other or more than human and not use it for ill, but actually see that as a gift.
Back in the 90s, I late 90s, no, mid 90s, I played in a role playing game that was called World of Darkness, and they had it where you
Is that what did it? Did Dungeons and Dragons change that?
mm,
RPGs?
not. I don't think so. I think it was
Hmm,
just. It was
okay.
just. It was just. Reading the wind, of where it was blowing. But there was one called Werewolf: The Apocalypse, and basically, being a werewolf was something that was passed on, and you had to do it in a certain way. If you didn't do it right, it was a mutation, and they kind of are these clanless. But everybody has clans that they're all in, but there's this spiritual element to it. It's very shamanistic in some ways, and there's this corruptive, cosmic, demonic, talking about word in the void kind of thing. It's kind of like a void.
Mm.
It's called the worm, and it corrupts the environment. So there's an environmentalist kind of, so a spiritual environmental thing of the mid '90s, and people thinking, "Ooh, this is cool to be a werewolf." It kind of came together in that game. So it was a gift in that. In fact, your powers are actually called gifts. But to me, it got to be where people were just they were just kind of reveling in how cool it was that they were this thing and they had all these powers. It ended up being like superpower kind of situations.
We went from the supernatural being something very other and being feared
Hmm.
to the supernatural being something that
Embraced.
was embraced in a lot of different types of things.
We had Lestat in the Anne Rice things, and then Louis sees it as a curse, as in I lose everybody that I love, and everybody gets taken from me, and it's just tragedy after tragedy. And Lestat is like, rock and roll. He's a he it's this, and that's the thing is there's a shift from Dracula being this scary but romantic kind of vampire to it being more of a kind of this rock and roller kind of sensual thing. And so has that happened with werewolves as well? Is that why you see all this stuff that goes a little
Well,
bit
I
too
think
far in one way in one?
think that there's something that has just become a mindset, and it is that it's the famous Dumbledore quote, right?
Okay.
It's our choices that define us far more than our abilities. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have.
It's the same thing we saw with the demon thing with the Hellboys and
Right.
all those kind of things, in our episode about the demons.
And I think that that's something that people just, it's true. It's so true that wherever you go and whatever, situation you find yourself, it's the beauty and the beast mentality, right? Of going, I want to see beyond the outward appearance of what someone looks like to who they are at the heart, because you can be beautiful on the outside and be a beast within.
Yeah. A monster is what you do and how you think, not
Right.
what you look like.
And that's going to stand up whether you're a werewolf, whether you're a vampire, whether you're, you know,
A dragon shifter or a half demon.
right.
Right.
So that idea of we all have a choice to make with what we've been given. We're not defined by the way we are born or what happens to us. Something horrible can happen to us, but we get to choose what we do with that and what kind of person we want to be.
And that's why the not only the vampire thing but the werewolf thing is, it's a tragedy that's thrust upon you in the
Hmm.
fiction, not the ones where that you born with the gift or whatever, but it comes from a trauma, a bite, an attack
Hmm.
of some sort.
More often nowadays, it's something that you're born.
You see how they're shifting it
Yeah.
because they're
It's
not wanting to make
it's
it trauma
typically
based.
not something that is, yeah, but there are still occasionally some that are written where it comes from a bite, where it's an infection. But even with those, it's still one of the things that we go, it's not what happened to
You're
you,
turning a
it's what
trauma into
you
a
choose
strength.
to do with it.
Right.
And I think that that's just a universal human lesson that we try to learn through multiple different types of fiction and media, is we're going, we have the ability to choose and to reshape the things that happen to us. We all are born into something. We're born into a body, we're born into, a financial status, we're born into, you know all of these different situations that just kind of, here, this is where you've been placed in life.
Family
And then we
issues.
have
Yeah.
things that happen to us. We have tragedies and traumas that happen to us throughout our
Had
lives.
no control over. We're very chaotic.
Right. But through all of that, the one thing that we can determine is what we choose to do with what has been given to us, how we choose to react, how we choose to think. Our minds are our own. And when you take the werewolf thing and you think of it as losing your humanity, that's where it truly becomes traumatic, when we're no longer in control of our own minds. But when you place it as oh, well, they transform and something happens to their bodies that they can't control, but they can still control their minds,
Right.
that's giving them power over that. It's taking the scary out of it, because it's truly terrifying to think of becoming a werewolf and not having sentience in
Yeah.
that, of losing your humanity through
A lot of times in sometimes those old mystery things, they'd wake up and they'd have blood on their hands.
that. Right.
They'd be like, "What did I do?" You know what I'm saying? That almost,
And knowing that you have to chain yourself once a month because something is going to happen to you that you can't control.
yeah,
That's a much different narrative than the Stephanie Meyer werewolves and, a lot of the shifter fiction that is available now. All of that is, yes, this happens, but it's actually, I can look on it as a gift because I get these abilities and the strength, and it brings me together with a pack. And, I get this brother or, sister,
It
this
sounds like a recovery
mentality of
group because you're
family.
getting
And
you're getting in a group, a circle, and there are all these people saying, "Yeah, I deal with trauma too," and they're all, but I'm overcoming it, and so so they're all in a circle saying, "I've got tragedy. I was, you know."
And I mean, there are stories about
They're finding
werewolves
strength
where
in a
it's like,
family of
something has
trauma.
happened and they become a lone wolf. But, always the stories take you to them being adopted into some kind of situation. There's the found family aspect that happens in a
Yeah.
lot of stories. A lot of these are a lot of the same stories happening throughout. But this, largely the books that I read, being a wolf is a gift. It's not a curse. So it's kind of
Well, I think
I don't even know
turning,
if they're still even writing books where it's actually them losing complete control. I will say
yeah,
I read a book series a couple months ago where there was a supernatural town, and the alpha, the way that it went was that when he found his mate, like the first, if he didn't actually, have an established relationship with his mate, or she hadn't accepted him,
yeah.
he would lose control the first full moon after that, because the mate bond
The
wasn't
fated mate
completed.
thing, you said there was somebody that if they didn't find their fated mate, they would die, and then you said they would lose control. So there's a
Yeah.
state or a state of the
So,
story you don't want. There's a
but
a
it's kind of,
choice you don't want.
it just seems like it's just moving the plot along. I mean, sure, okay, that, that could work. And it was a nice story. It was, really sweet. But again, that was something that it wasn't him going on a rampage. It was just him being kind of out of his mind and overwhelmed because, and wanting to, like, go to his mate. And, like, there's this heartbreak and this trauma and him being out of control, but he locked himself up for a couple of days, and, he was fine afterwards.
This one
So,
guy in the TV series they did in UK and Canada, it was called Being Human. There was a werewolf character, and he had this thing. It would happen every so often, and what he did, he'd plan on it. He would be like, he would take clothes and have little caches of clothes that he'd place around just in case he
mhm,
ended up, you know, au naturel out in the nature, so to speak. But he would also take, he had a little trick. He would take a chicken from the store, just and he would put a rope on it. And he would drag it all through the forest, and then and he'd be like, It's just what he does. He put it away, and if he was out there in his wolf form, he would be sniffing around, following the smell of the chicken in this route all night long. And then and it was his way of I don't want to cause anybody trouble. I know I have these things that I deal with. It almost sounded like a
of course,
somebody with
then
an
a
obsessive
human gets
compulsive
lost
disorder.
and, crosses the trail, and he ends up actually chasing after that just sounds like something that would happen.
Well, yeah,
That he comes to and realizes that, like, he's cornered or captured a human and been terrorizing them or something.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
was moments away from killing someone when I came back to my senses.
yeah. And there's, of course, there's it's other little dramas in that
Yeah.
story, and that's just one of them. But yeah, it just sounded like somebody that goes, I know I have this problem, and yeah, I have this obsessive compulsive disorder, whatever you want to call about it, and these are my coping mechanisms that you
Mhm.
put in place. You're like, okay, I know I'm going to do this. So it just sounded like somebody who was like, I know I have ADHD, and so I know I need to, not get too involved with something. It's like when you know yourself, you know your
We
issues.
want to, as humans, believe that anything that's thrown at us, we can figure out a way to overcome it, don't we?
It's kind of admirable in a way.
It is. And I would say that the majority of things that are out there, we can. But the reality is that there are some things that are just, there are some times when things happen to us that we can't control. And losing your mind, I mean, it still is one of the most terrifying things to a human, of knowing that your mind can snap
It's not your
and
own.
break and that you aren't in control of it anymore. That's
Because what do you do? I mean, because when God says, here are your choices. You can choose a path that is selfish and evil, or you can choose a path, and then you say, I'm going to choose the good path. And then there's something overriding that says, you're going to go down this path and choose this, and you feel like you have your choice taken away from you.
yeah.
And that's something that people really fight back against. And sometimes that can even cause people not to believe in God, because that they believe that their choices are taken away because you have an all powerful God. So no one wants to lose control of their faculties, whether that is something spiritual or something, due to a disease or physical. So those are those things that we are afraid of. And so I think our way we fight back against that in the fiction is we go, well, I am in control of myself. It's just
Mhm.
more of who I am. But what God wants us to be is to be more, to be like God wants us to be, is to be more human.
Mhm.
And on all these stories, you're supposed to connect with the protagonist. You're supposed to go, oh, yeah, I feel like I am that character. But that character's always got something special about them. They're either a werewolf or a vampire or a ghost or a mage or a superhero or something. And do we really connect with these people that are normal people dealing with day to day? Or do we go more towards the fantastical because we think we're not so special? We think I'm not special, so I need to be something other. I need to be this other. And that's not the way God sees us. God sees us as special because we're made in the image of God.
Mhm.
And I mean, if anything, the book of Revelation should teach us that we should avoid anything that says the word beast. avoid the beast nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beast nature is always, lower in
Mhm.
terms of, it seeks after its own vices and does whatever it wants to do. It doesn't have God's will in mind. If anything, we're supposed to triumph over that, overcome it.
Mhm.
And so I can relate to those stories about people that are changing and have no control over that, and try to overcome it and try to find a way to stop
Mhm.
from hurting people. And that's, there's only one way to do that. There's only one way to go about that, is to go just to go the path that God's laid out for you.
I like the ones where there is a need for surrender, because in the end, in reality, all of us have parts of ourselves that we struggle with and that we can't control, and that we feel like, in my own strength, I just can't do this. I need someone outside of myself to help. And that's God. That's turning to him and saying, I can't. My human nature, my sin nature is too strong. I can't keep from sinning. I need you, God, to help me. I need the supernatural,
Yeah.
the true supernatural, to help me to overcome this, to give me that strength on a day to day basis, to continue on with the struggle, and to be able to conquer and to create a new story for my future.
We are maybe, hear me out, maybe called to transform every day from the beast to man, to human, in the way that God defines what human truly is.
Mhm.
So we're constantly overcoming that bestial nature, the one that goes, I'm the most important thing in this room. My needs are the most important thing in this room. Whether that's food or other lusts or fleshly desires. I mean, you overcome, and you see it as a triumph to become the man, rather than see it as a way to be completely and truly free as the beast. Because you're not truly free. You're actually a slave to instinct, and there is no choice. You just, it's the least common denominator, the least, The very thing that's in your mind is the thing you just go after. So for some people, that's a freeing thing, but we as Christians know that that's not a freedom, but it's a slavery.
I'm justified in enjoying supernatural books, right? And fiction. Because,
Depends on what you get,
well,
where you
that's
go
the
with it.
thing, is we can look for the supernatural, but if it needs to ultimately draw and point us back to the supernatural, the real supernatural, which is God. And the verse, be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind and your hearts in Christ Jesus, right? So
Right.
we're not looking for a physical transformation, though what happens in our minds and our hearts, I think, does affect us
The
physically,
body the mind leads and the
and
body
the body
follows.
follows, right?
Right.
So we need our minds and our thoughts to be transformed by God, that supernatural element that needs to touch us every single day. And if there's some fiction that you can read, there's some good, wholesome stories out there that, they're just fun and they're interesting. And there's a lot of good lessons and a lot of struggle that's shown
Just
there.
don't delve too much into the stuff that's very indulgent,
Oh,
that
yeah.
indulges that darker side, because that's trying to feed that beast, and that and we don't want to do that.
But there's good stuff out
Yeah, there is.
there that allows you to kind of escape into that supernatural world of other fantastical creatures and beings. But, you know,
It can be very. You can keep it
you can also
shallow
find,
and fun, or you can find
yeah,
some
you can
deeper
find
meaning
some
in things.
depth. You can find depth in like everything in a silly
And I
topic like
will,
this.
and I will just watch me. So no, I enjoy doing that because it means that I'm not just having fun with something silly. I'm actually getting something that's substantial from it, taking it forward. That's my excuse. Yep.
All right. Well, to wrap it up, do you have any more thoughts?
Transform your mind going forward in 2026, which is the new year. Seek after Christ and learn what it means to be truly human, and not what the world defines humanity is, but to be closer to God is to find out what it means to be truly yourself, your true self, what you're meant to be.
Finding something superhuman from the supernatural that only God can give us.
Yes.
The ability to have that supernatural control over our emotions, to love even in the face of anger and selfishness or pride, or, there's so many things that we face on a day to day basis that we need Him to be able to show love
The
to
only
the world.
the only constant in life is change, which is interesting because, you know, but that's the thing that is a constant is change, and you need to embrace it in terms of that you're not going to be the same person that you were the day before. And hopefully that's for the good. Hopefully that's for the positive.
All right. We're going to end that there, and we will see you guys in 2026. See you guys next time.